Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome this evening back to Shack Attack, the second segment of tonight's show. As we speak to Craig Ray of the Daily Mavericks, the sport editor, about 1 year later since the rugby win, the Springbok World Cup rugby win. And first of all, just how different the world is right now, 1 year later. Craig will be speaking to us quite shortly, and we can bring him on. And we look forward to speaking about the nostalgia around the win, as well as where they are at the moment in terms of their own careers, post Rugby World Cup win. Craig, we welcome you to Salam Media, and thanks so much for speaking to us this evening.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. Nice to be on.
So it's been a year, and it doesn't feel like it because this year itself was hardly much of a year, and all the euphoria that should have probably catapulted into society in different ways, I think might have been stifled by what was the coronavirus. So I know that you spoke and wrote about what this moment means for our country. What do you think it means today? And did the virus kind of cut at any trajectory that we were on as a country? Post a World Cup win like that. Before we get into actual rugby tactics and where the team is at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't had a chance to build on that momentum, have they? Just purely for rugby terms, and then of course there hasn't been an opportunity to, use the goodwill that came from the victory in a marketing sense, and use the Springboks as a brand for the country. It's just everything's gone flat because of it. That's out of their hands, though, I suppose. And all they can do is when they eventually get back on the field at some point, and we're hoping that will be at some point in fairly early 2021. The Springboks can hit the ground running. They had the opportunity to play in the Rugby Championship, or now it's called the Tri-Nations because the Springboks didn't go, but it would have been the Rugby Championships had they gone. And they had that opportunity and they declined it for various reasons, which we can talk about in a moment. But and I think it was the right choice. It was a difficult choice because it wasn't so much about money. It was about getting the world champions on the field. And the Springbok hierarchy and Rassie Erasmus and Jacques Nienaber in particular, they weighed everything up, didn't they? And they went, well, yes, we could play. There is a bit of money to be made, but the opposite of that is we're probably going to get thrashed by the All Blacks because our players just won't be up to speed. And we've seen how Australia, who have had 12 weeks of play, are struggling to stay with the All Blacks. And let's be honest, to beat the All Blacks or even to get close to the All Blacks, you have to be everything has to be going brilliantly. You can't just be 5% off your game because you are going to get 40, 50 points. So I think it's been a frustrating year. I suppose that's the word, but it's been frustrating for everyone. And it's disappointing. But as Frans Malherbe said to me the other day, we were doing a webinar, and he actually said someone told him, he said, it has been a terrible year, but think it could have been 2019, and then you wouldn't have gone to the World Cup and you wouldn't have won it. So you got to take the positive spin out of it.
True, actually. Yeah.
And it is true. Had it happened 1 year earlier, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't be having this lacquer 1 year anniversary.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Craig, I suppose every World Cup victory has its own kind of flavor to it. And it seemed that in what was generally quite a challenging time, for South Africa as a country, the 2019 World Cup team to just pick us up. What do you think it was about, apart from the fact that it's just this magnificent sporting victory, that we'd seen some excellent rugby played from our side? What do you think it was about this championship in particular, which had, or this trophy, which had been such a big upliftment to the country?
Yeah, I think the obvious thing is, it felt like the first really totally inclusive World Cup because Siya Kolisi as captain made a huge difference to I think most people's perception of the Springboks. I think it was the first really integrated team that won it, and I'm not just talking pure numbers now. I'm talking about people that really felt like a team that played for each other, that everyone felt equally a part of the team. So I think there was just these subtle changes in the Springbok team of the last couple of years, with Siya Kolisi leading the way, that made, I think, most South Africans feel really part of it for the first time. And people like Mapimpi, Kolisi, in particular, they connected with a certain audience that perhaps South African teams of the past have not connected with. So it was, I think, from that sense, it really was brilliant. And then, I just think everything they did seemed to work. I know they lost the opening game, but let's not get too distracted about that loss. It was neither here nor there. And in fact, if you go and analyze that game, they should have won it. They actually created more chances than the All Blacks. They probably played their best game against the All Blacks for 2 years and didn't win it. And that's just, sometimes how it goes. But they played a style of rugby that up until the semi-final, when everyone said, "Oh, they're kicking too much," but people started to understand there's a method in how they're playing. They're playing the opposition. They're playing territory-based game. They're winning the collisions. The bomb squad became a fun thing and an important thing. So I think there were lots of little narratives going on in this team. From Siya Kolisi to Rassie Erasmus, who's a fairly eccentric coach, to the bomb squad, to the tournament being in Japan, which made it quite interesting as well. And to the fact that England were sort of looming as this challenger after the All Blacks, and there's always something great about taking on England as well from a South African point of view. So all in all, I think it sort of just ticked every box. Some of it per chance, and some of it by design.
So I mean, with many World Cup wins, it inspires young people to maybe play the game that they were not playing, or continue playing and catapult themselves into the positions of the now heroes as they emerge, which didn't really take place. So how do you think we could capitalize on a win, post coronavirus, maybe 2021, and try and pick up all the sticks that have fallen, because those moments on the street and on community grassroots level as well, are still sort of there and laying dormant, and I think could potentially be useful for the future if possible. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think the one really big upside is that the British and Irish Lions are coming next year. Now, after a World Cup, that's the next biggest sort of rugby challenge from a Springbok point of view. So there's a lot of opportunity to hype and market that and get people excited about the Springboks again after such a long time. If it was just like Italy and Georgia coming here in June or July, unfortunately, that wouldn't really help with the marketing of the game. So I think the fact that the British and Irish and Lions are coming is massive. And then, people like Mapimpi, who's come out of the club game in the Eastern Cape, and others have sort of connected with the grassroots level in a bigger way than I think other previous Springbok teams. So, I don't think all is lost. It's been disappointing, been frustrating, but it really is. The Springboks are still the world champions till 2023. Let's not forget. And it doesn't matter what happens between now and then. They can tap into that, and rugby's changing as well at a provincial level. Super Rugby, as we know it, is over. The top South African teams are going into the Northern Hemisphere, and that's a big market, and that's where the Springboks brand will grow, exponentially as well. So I think there's a lot of positives to come, but of course it all depends on this horrible virus, and if we have like a second wave and a third wave, and who knows, and where we're going to be. But let's look at it positively, and they'll be back on the field next year. And they can cash in on that world title status. And, they also, a lot of these players have had a lot more time to recover physically than they normally would have. Rugby players generally at this level are always playing with a niggle. They're slightly fatigued. They're never 100%. So I think a lot of players by next March or April will probably be in the best physical condition they've ever been in their professional career. So there is an upside to it as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, the question I was gonna ask, and I'm glad you brought up the fact that they're gonna have this period where they're able to rest. But more than that, I think rugby as a team sport is about that dynamic, and having not played on the field against another big team for such a long time, do you think that this period off is going to affect the chemistry between players?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Jacques Nienaber actually said it in a podcast I did with him that no rugby player ever gets better by sitting on the sideline. And that's the reality, and no team gets more cohesive, without playing together. I'm a big Liverpool football fan. I don't know, forgive me if you guys are not, but and they took 4 years under Jurgen Klopp to sort of get to where they got to as a cohesive unit. And look, I'm not saying that every team will evolve in that time frame. So the Springboks certainly were on a roll, and look, even if there wasn't coronavirus, between November 2019, they would have only played in July again in a normal year. So there has still been an 8-month gap between games. which is a long period. But they would have then had a sequence of games to build up to the Rugby Championship and so on, and then that momentum clicks. So they are going to be up against it, and especially with the Lions coming, they've got to find some game time as a unit, not just individuals playing for their provinces. So I understand they've earmarked 2 Saturdays at some point next year to play 2 test matches, or there might not even be test matches. There might be matches against composite teams, so they won't have carry test status. But the point is for the Springboks to actually play some rugby, before they take the Lions on. Look, that Lions series has become far more complicated and difficult than it might have been. But the alternative of not having it is far worse. So, there's big challenges ahead for the Springboks. But they've got a good group of players. They've got a core of the team, and I think what they did in the build-up to 2019, they had a lot of these alignment camps where everyone was on the same page. Technically, if the players are fit and strong through their provincial game, it shouldn't take too long. The biggest problem the Springbok coaches were facing now was not technical stuff. It was physiology. It was, are they going to be up to speed to play at that level? And the answer was no. But by July next year, when the Lions are here, whether or not they've played together as a Springbok team, physically, the players will be ready. And then the technical stuff shouldn't be that difficult to slot in because they have done it together for 2 years before, and they will have a lot of alignment camps leading up to that period anyway. So they'll be on the same page tactically and technically.
Craig, I think that's where we have to leave it this evening. Really appreciate your time. And I think we're all looking forward to what you just speak about now, which is emerging later on after this dormant period. And with much to look forward to, I suppose, for all people involved. So we all thumbs, and we also look forward to what you have to say come next year.
Thanks very much for having me on, guys. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Please stay tuned, as after the break we'll be speaking to some exciting people who have rowed pretty much across the oceans, across the seas, something that you and I could never imagine, which you might just after listening to them. So stay tuned.